Welcome to my vlogging into Way ANOVA Project. I'm Ing. I'm from second period, and this is my project. I did mine specifically over car prices. So going into the research question and design, my research question was how do fuel type and mileage categories affect car prices, and whether or not there's an interaction effect between these two factors. Overall, the dataset contained information about used cars with the following variables. So it was whether or not fuel type or mileage would affect the price. So depending on if the fuel type was diesel, electric, hybrid, or petrol, and whether or not how high or low the mileage was, how those two would interact to affect the overall price of this used car. So going into my data exploration, I wanted to turn the mileage into categorical variables in order to better conduct a two-way ANOVA. This is because, as you can see here, it was all just in numbers, but I feel like that would be very hard to carry out. So I did it in a way where whether it was low, like whether it was just around 5,000, it would just be considered a low mileage. If it was high, it'd be considered high, just so it was also easier to see. And then furthermore, I also wanted to view the structure of the data. So I just did this by checking the structure through this code. And this would overall just allow me to see any discrepancies in the code and see if I was missing anything, missing any values. But overall, it all looked good whenever I was checking it. Next, I also wanted to visualize the distribution of prices across fuel types and mileage categories. So here's my code. I carried out a ggplot for this. And here are the car prices by fuel type and mile category. As you can see, it was evident that with the electric fuel type, it was a bit higher than the other three, but that the hybrid fuel type and the petrol fuel type had around the same range as well. And then next, I also did an interaction plot using this code, and this just came into terms with the fuel type and the main price. So going into fitting the model and summarizing the fit, so there were 4 conditions I wanted to ensure to check throughout in order to carry out this two-way ANOVA model. So this is what the independence of our observations, because I wanted to ensure that each observation or car price was independent of the others, and this is basically usually depends on how the data was overall collected originally. I also wanted to check the normality of residuals, because the residuals should be approximately normally distributed. And then next is the homogeneity of variances, just to ensure that the variance of residuals should be roughly equal across all groups. And then outliers, at the extreme outliers can distort ANOVA results. And overall here, this is where I carried out the two-way ANOVA model. Here's my code, and here's the summary of my model right here. So going into assessing the fit of the model, this is where I'm going to go into each of the conditions and how they each carried out into and how they affected the overall two-way ANOVA model. So independence, the independence of observations. So it was clear that this condition was met as each car in our dataset represented a different vehicle. The cars appeared to be independently sampled originally. There was no indication of repeated measurements or group data, and yes, this condition appears to be satisfied based on the data structure. Next, with the normality of residuals, I wanted to carry out a QQ plot. So right here, it seems that the points are not roughly scattered around the line, indicating that it has good homogeneity, and I also did carry this out through a histogram of residuals as well, showing that it is roughly more centered, clustered towards the center. Next, going into, I apologize. This should be concerning with the normality residuals. I apologize if I mentioned the homogeneity. So next is the homogeneity of variances or equal variances. Through this, I did it through a leave-in test, and these were the values that I got with an F value of 0.6755. And then here I also visualized it by spread of the group. Through here, it does look a bit scattered, but most of the plots are more clustered around the line, therefore confirming this condition and ensuring that it was met. Next, I also wanted to check if there was any significant outliers, as any rough outliers could affect the two-way ANOVA model. So I just did this through a box plot, seeing whether or not the fuel type would affect the price. So it is clear here that the car prices, I apologize, that the electric and diesel fuel type do have possibly significant outliers. However, it isn't too evident to affect the two-way ANOVA model, and here it just shows that the hybrid and petrol, like I stated previously, does have a large range, but it shouldn't affect the two-way ANOVA model too vastly. And I also did this due just the basic residuals with a simple residual plot showing that the points were roughly scattered. However, this condition was still met. So overall, the scope of inference, and so there are various fuel types and mileage categories, but I still wanted to consider some limitations, considering that the data may not be randomly sampled from all used cars. The sample size is relatively small with 35 observations, however, it still works as I met that normality condition. Overall, the data is also observational, not experimental, so we cannot make actual claims, and then the geographic and temporal limitations are unknown. And overall, here are the results and conclusions doing the Turkey AHSD model. I apologize, my t-test was not working correctly, so I was not able to provide a value for that, but I did do mileage as a blocking factor, just as it could possibly affect the two-way ANOVA model, and then I calculated the effect size, getting this number, and I apologize again, my confidence interval also was not working. And overall, I thank you, and overall, going back to the results and conclusions, it was evident that there was an effect with the price and mileage. I apologize, the mileage and the price did have an effect on the price, as they both vastly showed through the two-way ANOVA model. I thank you for your time. Thank you.